The cards hit the tavern table with a wet slap, and Torrin Kellaway realized too late that he had just won a living, breathing person. He stared at the grinning merchant across from him, a fat man with wine-stained teeth who was already pushing back from the table. "She's all yours, friend. Been nothing but trouble anyway, eating me out of house and home." The man gestured toward the corner where a figure sat hunched in shadows, wrists bound with iron manacles. "Consider it your lucky night." Torrin's stomach turned. He had only sat down because the merchant insisted, had only played because refusing would have caused a scene in a tavern already thick with tension. The border town of Millcross was no place to make enemies, not when you were just passing through on your way to anywhere else. He had thought it was a friendly game for coppers, maybe a few silvers at most. He had not known there were stakes beyond coin. "I don't want her," Torrin said, his voice low and steady despite the adrenaline flooding his veins. "Keep your property. I'll take my winnings in coin." The merchant laughed, a sound like gravel in a bucket. "No coin to give you, boy, the orc or nothing. Those were the terms when you sat down. Everyone heard it." Torrin looked around the tavern. A dozen faces stared back at him, some amused, some hostile, all waiting to see what he would do. His hand instinctively went to the pommel of his sword, but he forced himself to relax. Fighting his way out would solve nothing. "The terms I agreed to were a game of cards for the pot on the table," Torrin said carefully. "That pot has maybe 3 silver in it. And 1 orc woman, as I stated clearly before the first hand was dealt." The merchant's smile never wavered. "You want to call me a liar in front of all these witnesses?" Torrin's jaw tightened. He had been so focused on the cards, on reading the merchant's tells and playing his hand, that he genuinely could not remember what had been said before the game started. The tavern had been loud. He had been tired from days of travel, and he had been nursing his first ale in a week. It was possible the merchant had announced the stakes. It was also possible this was a con, but one he could not fight without making everything worse. He stood slowly, pushing his chair back. Every eye in the tavern followed him as he crossed to the corner where the orc woman sat. Up close, he could see her clearly for the first time. She was young, maybe his own age of 23 or near enough. Her skin was a deep forest green, darker in the dim tavern light. Small tusks curved up from her lower jaw, white against her green lips. Her black hair was matted and dirty, falling past her shoulders in tangled waves. She wore a simple brown tunic that was torn at one shoulder, and her feet were bare. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold. They were golden, bright and fierce even in the shadows, and they looked at him with such concentrated hatred that he almost stepped back. "I didn't know," he said quietly, just for her. "I didn't know you were part of the game." She said nothing, but her lip curled in what might have been contempt or might have been pain. Torrin looked at the manacles on her wrists. They were crude iron, rubbed raw at the edges where they had chafed her skin. The key would be with the merchant. He turned back to the table. "The key." The merchant tossed it to him, still grinning. "She's a fighter, that one. You'll want to keep her chained until you break her spirit properly. Tried to run twice already. Nearly took my finger off the second time." Torrin caught the key and walked back to the orc woman. He knelt in front of her, and her whole body tensed like a spring ready to snap. He held up the key where she could see it, then slowly reached for the manacles. "If you run, I won't chase you," he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "But if you stay, I'll get you out of this town and somewhere safer. Your choice." Her golden eyes narrowed, searching his face for the trap. He could see her mind working behind them, weighing options, calculating odds. When he unlocked the first manacle, her hand shot free, and for a heartbeat he thought she might claw his eyes out. But she held still, watching him as he unlocked the second cuff. The moment both hands were free, she lunged to her feet and bolted for the door. Torin did not chase her. He stood slowly, pocketing the key and the manacles, and turned to face the merchant. "We're done here." "Suit yourself," the merchant said with a shrug. "Can't say I didn't warn you, probably halfway to the woods already. Stupid creatures, orcs, no gratitude." Torin walked out of the tavern into the cool night air. Millcross was a small town, just a handful of buildings clustered around a crossroads where the northern trade route met the eastern lumber road. Beyond the buildings, the land opened up into farmland on one side and dense forest on the other. The orc woman was nowhere to be seen, but he knew which way she would have gone. The forest was the obvious choice for someone who wanted to disappear. He collected his horse from the stable behind the inn, a sturdy bay gelding named Rust, and rode slowly toward the tree line. He did not try to track her or call out. He just made his way to the edge of the forest and stopped, sitting in the saddle and waiting. The moon was 3/4 full, giving enough light to see by. After 10 minutes, he heard movement in the underbrush to his left. The orc woman emerged from behind a massive oak, her eyes still wary, still calculating. She stayed in the shadows, ready to bolt again if he made a wrong move. "My name is Torin Kellaway," he said, keeping his voice level and calm. "I'm a veteran from the southern campaigns, discharged 4 months ago. I'm traveling north to the homestead territories to claim land under the Settlement Act. I have supplies, food, and a horse. If you want to come with me, at least until you're far enough from this town to be safe, you're welcome to. If you want to go your own way right now, that's fine too. I meant what I said. It's your choice." She stared at him for a long moment. Then, in a voice rough from disuse, she spoke. "Why?" "Why what? Why would you help me? I am an orc. You are human. Your kind enslaves mine, kills us, hunts us for sport in some regions." Torin dismounted, moving slowly so as not to spook her. He stood beside his horse, one hand on Rust's neck. "My kind does a lot of things I'm not proud of. I spent 3 years fighting in a war I didn't believe in, killing people who were no different from me, except for the flag they followed. I'm done being part of things that make me sick to my stomach. If I walked away from you tonight, left you to figure things out alone in a town that clearly hates your people, I would be just as bad as that merchant. Worse, maybe, because I would have had the power to do something and chose not to." She was quiet, processing his words. Then she stepped forward into the moonlight, fully visible now. She was tall, nearly his own height of 6 feet, and despite the obvious signs of rough treatment and poor food, she was powerfully built. Her arms showed lean muscle, and she moved with the grace of someone who had trained in combat or hard labor. "I am called Geshara," she said finally, "daughter of Grishak of the Black Ridge clan. I was taken 3 months ago during a raid on our settlement, sold to that pig in the tavern. Before that, I do not know how many hands I passed through." "I'm sorry," Torin said and meant it. Geshara's expression hardened. "I do not want your pity, human. Not pity, just sorrow that it happened." He gestured to Rust. "The offer stands. Come with me to the homestead territories or go your own way. Either choice is valid. If I come with you, what would you expect in return?" The question was blunt, and he could hear the layers beneath it. She was asking what kind of servitude or abuse he would demand, what price he would extract for his help. It made his chest ache that she had to ask. "Nothing," he said. "Help around camp would be appreciated, but I can manage alone if you prefer to keep your distance. I know how to cook, set up a tent, tend a horse, and watch for trouble. Once we get far enough north that you feel safe, you can decide whether you want to continue on with me or go your own way. No strings." Geshara studied him with those golden eyes, and he had the unsettling feeling she could see straight through to his bones, reading every truth and lie he had ever told. Finally, she nodded once. "I will come, but if you betray me, human, I will kill you in your sleep." "Fair enough," Torin said. He meant it. If he betrayed her after making this promise, he would deserve whatever she did to him. They left Millcross that night, riding north on the lumber road until it narrowed to a trail, then leaving the trail entirely to cut through open country. Torin wanted to put as much distance as possible between them and the town before dawn. Geshara walked beside the horse, refusing his offer to ride even though he could see she was exhausted. Her pride would not allow her to accept more help than absolutely necessary, and he respected that. When the sky began to lighten in the east, he called a halt near a stream that cut through a meadow of tall grass. Geshara immediately went to the water and drank deeply, then washed her face and arms. Torin unsaddled Rust and let the horse graze while he set up a small camp. He had a bedroll, a canvas tarp he could string up for shelter, a cookpot and supplies for several weeks of travel. From his pack, he pulled out a clean shirt and a pair of trousers. They would be too big for Geshara, but they were better than the torn tunic she wore. "Here," he said, offering them to her. "You can keep the tunic if you want, but these might be more comfortable for traveling." She looked at the clothes, then at him. "You would give me your clothing. I have others. Take them." Geshara accepted the clothes and disappeared behind a cluster of bushes to change. When she emerged, she looked slightly less like a prisoner and more like a traveler, though the pants had to be rolled at the ankles and the shirt hung loose on her frame. She had used the stream to wash some of the dirt from her hair, and Torin could see that it was actually a deep black, shining in the early morning light. He made a simple breakfast of flatbread and dried meat, dividing it evenly between them. Geshara ate quickly, like someone who expected the food to be taken away at any moment. When she was done, she looked at him again with that piercing gaze. "Why did you really free me?" Torin poured water from his canteen into 2 cups, handing her one. "I told you the truth back in the forest." "You told me a reason, not the reason," he sighed, leaning back against a tree. "When I was in the southern campaigns, I saw things that changed me. My unit was part of a force that raided a village suspected of harboring enemy soldiers. We found no soldiers, just families. Old people, children, mothers with babies. My commander ordered us to burn the village anyway to send a message. Most of my unit obeyed. I did not. I got myself arrested for insubordination and spent 2 months in a military stockade before they decided it was easier to discharge me than court-martial me." Geshara listened without interrupting. When he finished, she nodded slowly. "You have honor. That is rare." "I have regrets," Torin corrected. "Honor would have been stopping it, not just refusing to participate. But I learned something in that stockade. I learned that I would rather suffer consequences for doing the right thing than live comfortably knowing I did the wrong thing. When I saw you in that tavern, chained up like an animal, I knew what the right thing was. So I did it." They rested through the heat of the day, sleeping in shifts so one of them could keep watch. Torin took the first watch, sitting with his back to the tree and his sword across his knees. He watched Geshara sleep, noting how even in rest she seemed coiled and ready for danger. She woke every hour or so, her eyes snapping open to check her surroundings before she allowed herself to drift off again. The sleep of someone who had been hunted. When evening came, they broke camp and continued north. Over the next several days, they fell into a rhythm. They traveled mostly at night to avoid other people, slept during the day in hidden campsites, and spoke little. Geshara remained guarded, though Torin noticed small signs of her relaxing. She accepted food without hesitation now. She slept more deeply. Once, he even heard her hum a low melody while she washed their cups in a stream. On the 5th night, they made camp in the ruins of an old homestead. The buildings were long collapsed, nothing left but stone foundations and a chimney rising like a broken tooth from the earth. But there was a well that still held clean water, and the ruins provided cover from the wind that had picked up with the changing weather. Torin built a small fire in the shelter of the ruined chimney, and they sat on opposite sides of it, eating a stew he had made from wild vegetables and a rabbit he had snared that morning. Geshara had watched him prepare the snare with interest, and when he checked it and found the rabbit, she had shown him the proper way to dress it quickly and cleanly. It was the first time she had voluntarily offered knowledge, and he had been careful not to make a big deal of it. "Tell me about the homestead territories," Geshara said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. "What is there?" Torin stirred the fire with a stick. "Land, mostly. The Crown opened up settlement 5 years ago for veterans and their families. If you can claim a parcel, build a structure and work the land for 2 years, it becomes yours free and clear. It is hard country, mostly wilderness. Some folks have started farms. Others have failed and gone back south. But it is a chance to start over, build something that is yours. And you believe you can succeed where others have failed." He smiled at the challenge in her voice. "Maybe, maybe not. But I would rather fail at building something than succeed at destroying things. I did enough destroying in the army." Geshara poked at the fire with her own stick, sending sparks spiraling into the night. "Among my people, the one who builds the hearth is honored above the one who wins in battle. We value creation over destruction, but humans see us as destroyers, as monsters who burn and kill." "Some humans," Torin said. "Not all." "Enough," Geshara countered. "Enough that my people are hunted and enslaved. Enough that I was taken in a raid and sold like cattle. Your kindness is unusual, Torin Kellaway. That makes it dangerous." "Dangerous how?" She looked at him across the flames, her golden eyes reflecting the firelight. "Because it makes me want to trust you, and trust is how they catch you. Trust is how you end up in chains." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with pain. Torin wanted to tell her that not everyone would betray her, that she could trust him, that he would never put her in chains. But words were cheap. She had probably heard 1,000 promises from people who broke them the moment it was convenient. So instead, he just nodded. "Then do not trust me. Just travel with me, see what happens. You can leave any time." Geshara stared at him for a long moment, then returned her attention to the fire. They finished their meal in silence, but it was a different kind of silence than before. Something had shifted between them, a wall coming down just slightly. That night, Torin woke to find Geshara standing at the edge of their camp, looking out at the darkness beyond. He sat up quietly, not wanting to startle her. "Cannot sleep. I keep thinking they will come for me," she admitted. "In my dreams, I am always running and they are always behind me." "No one is coming," Torin said. "We are far from Millcross now, and the merchant did not seem like the type to chase after someone he considered more trouble than she was worth." "You do not understand," Geshara said, turning to face him. "It is not just that merchant, it is all of them. Every human who sees an orc alone sees an opportunity. Slave traders, bounty hunters, soldiers looking for an easy target. I am never safe in your lands." "Then we will get you out of human lands," Torin said. "The homestead territories border the northern ranges. Beyond those mountains are orc clans who have never submitted to human rule. Once we get there, you can decide if you want to try to find your people or make a new start somewhere else." Geshara shook her head. "The Black Ridge clan is gone, destroyed in the raid that took me. And I cannot simply walk into another clan's territory. I would be seen as an outsider, clanless. That is almost as dangerous as being alone among humans." "Then what do you want to do?" Torin asked. Not what you think you should do or what you think you can do. What do you want? The question seemed to surprise her. She opened her mouth, then closed it, considering. Finally, she said, I want to stop running. I want to wake up without fear. I want to build something that cannot be taken from me. Then come north with me, Torin said. Build something with me. Not as my servant or my property, but as my partner. We claim land together, build a homestead together, defend it together. Two people working toward the same goal have a better chance than one person alone. Geshara looked at him with suspicion and something else, something that might have been hope. You would do this. Make an orc your equal partner in a human settlement. The homestead territories are not really human or orc, Torin said. They are just frontier. Whoever can survive there belongs there. And yes, I would do this. I meant what I said before. I am done with the way things have always been done. If we are going to start over, we might as well start over right. She studied him for a long time, her expression unreadable. Then she said, I will think on it. That is all I ask, Torin said. He lay back down, giving her space to think. Eventually, he heard her return to her own bedroll, and sometime before dawn, he fell back asleep. They continued north, and the land began to change. The gentle hills and meadows of the borderlands gave way to rougher country, with dense forests and rocky outcroppings. The weather turned colder as they gained elevation, and Torin broke out his spare cloak for Geshara. She accepted it without comment, but he noticed she wore it carefully, like it was something precious. They also began to encounter other travelers more frequently. The homestead territories were drawing people from all over, those seeking fresh starts or fleeing old troubles. Most travelers ignored them, too focused on their own journeys to care about a man and an orc woman traveling together. But twice, they encountered hostility. The first time was at a river crossing, where a family with a loaded wagon blocked the ford. The father took one look at Geshara and put his hand on a rifle. That your slave, mister? She is my traveling companion, Torin said evenly. Then you are a fool or a traitor. Orcs are monsters. You should put that thing down before it turns on you. Torin felt Geshara tense beside him, but she said nothing. He kept his voice calm and cold. We are just passing through. No need for trouble. No trouble as long as you keep that monster away from my family, the father said. He waited until Torin and Geshara had crossed the river 20 yards upstream before he let his family continue. As they disappeared down the trail, Torin heard the man lecturing his children about the dangers of orcs and the madness of the man who traveled with one. You should not have defended me, Geshara said quietly. It will make people suspicious of you. Let them be suspicious, Torin replied. I am not interested in making friends with people who see you as less than human, or less than orc, I suppose. The corner of Geshara's mouth twitched, and he realized with surprise that she had almost smiled. The second encounter was more dangerous. They were camped in a hollow off the main trail when 3 men rode up, bounty hunters by the look of them. Rough men with hard eyes and weapons worn from use. The leader, a man with a scar across his nose, dismounted and walked toward their camp. That is a fine-looking orc you have there, he said to Torin. Healthy, strong, I will give you 20 silver for her. She is not for sale, Torin said, standing and placing himself between Geshara and the bounty hunters. Everything is for sale at the right price, the scarred man said. How about 30? That is more than fair. I said she is not for sale. The scarred man's expression hardened. Listen, boy. I have a writ from the territorial governor authorizing me to collect rogue orcs. I can take her legal-like, or I can take her the hard way. Either way, I am taking her. The only question is whether you walk away from this with your silver or your teeth in the dirt. Torin's hand went to his sword. He was outnumbered and these men were clearly experienced fighters. But he was not going to let them take Geshara. Not after everything. Before the situation could escalate further, Geshara stepped up beside him. "I challenge you," she said to the scarred man, her voice ringing with authority. "By the old laws, the right of individual combat. If I win, you leave us be. If you win, I go with you willingly." The scarred man laughed. "There are no old laws out here, Orc. Just me and my men and our writs." "Then you are cowards who hide behind paper," Geshara said. "Afraid to face one unarmed Orc woman in fair combat." The insult struck home. The scarred man's face darkened with anger. "Fine. You want to fight. We will fight. But when I beat you down, you come with no struggle and your human friend does not interfere." "Agreed," Geshara said before Torin could protest. The scarred man drew a knife and Geshara stepped into the open space of their camp. Torin wanted to stop her, but he could see the determination in her eyes. This was important to her. This was her choice to make. The fight was brief and brutal. The scarred man was skilled with his knife, but Geshara was faster and stronger. She dodged his first slash, caught his wrist on the second, and twisted hard enough that Torin heard bone snap. The knife fell to the ground, and Geshara followed up with a punch to the man's jaw that sent him sprawling. She picked up his knife and held it to his throat before his companions could react. "We had an agreement," Geshara said, her voice deadly calm. "You lost. Now you leave us be." The scarred man, clutching his broken wrist, nodded frantically. His companions helped him to his horse, and all three rode away quickly, casting fearful glances back at Geshara. When they were gone, Geshara dropped the knife and sat down heavily. Her hands were shaking. Torin sat beside her, close but not touching. "That was incredibly brave," he said. "And incredibly stupid." "I know," Geshara said. She laughed, a short, sharp sound. "But I am so tired of running. I needed to stand and fight just once, to prove to myself that I still could." "You proved it," Torin said. "You were magnificent." Geshara looked at him, and for the first time there was no suspicion in her gaze, just gratitude and something warmer. "Thank you for not interfering. I know you wanted to." "It was your fight," Torin said. "I would have backed you up if you needed it, but you did not need it." They sat together as the sun set, and Torin realized that something fundamental had changed between them. The walls were coming down, trust was building, and with it something else, something he was not quite ready to name. They reached the homestead territories 3 weeks after leaving Millcross. The land office was a rough building in a settlement called Last Hope, the northernmost outpost of human civilization. The clerk was a tired-looking man who barely glanced up when Torin entered. "Here to file a claim?" the clerk asked. "Yes," Torin said. "Under the Veteran Settlement Act." The clerk pushed a map across the desk. It showed the surrounding territory divided into parcels. Most were marked as claimed, but there were still several open areas in the rougher, more remote sections. Torin studied the map, looking for something with water, timber, and defensible ground. Geshara stood behind him, looking over his shoulder. She pointed to a parcel in the foothills, where a stream cut through a valley between 2 ridges. "There. Good water, good sight lines, close to the forest but not too close. Game will be plentiful and you could plant crops in the valley." The clerk finally looked up, seeing Geshara for the first time. His eyes widened, but he said nothing. Torin appreciated the man's professionalism. "That parcel is available." "It is," the clerk said. "Rough country, though. 2 previous claimants gave up on it. Soil is rocky, winters are harsh, and you are close enough to the northern ranges that you might get Orc raiding parties." Torin glanced at Geshara, and she gave him a small nod. "I will take it." The clerk filled out the paperwork, recording Torin's name and service record. When he got to the section about family or partners, he paused. Anyone else on this claim? Torin looked at Geshara. That is up to her. The clerk followed his gaze, understanding dawning. You want to file a joint claim? With an orc? Is there a law against it? Torin asked. The clerk flipped through his books, frowning. Finally, he shook his head. Nothing specific. The law says veterans and their families or working partners. It does not specify species. But I have to warn you, folks around here are not going to like it. You will face hostility. We have been facing hostility since we met, Torin said. What is a little more? The clerk shrugged and added Geshara's name to the claim. You have 2 years to build a dwelling, cultivate at least 2 acres, and prove continuous residence. After that, the land is yours. Good luck. You are going to need it. They bought supplies in last hope, using the last of Torin's saved pay from the army. Tools, seeds, a better tent, warmer clothing for the winter that was coming, and a rifle with ammunition. The shopkeeper charged them double when he saw Geshara, but Torin paid without argument. They needed the supplies more than they needed the principal. As they loaded everything onto Rust, an old woman approached them. She was small and bent with age, but her eyes were sharp. You are the ones who filed on the valley parcel. We are, Torin said. Then you should know the history. That land is cursed, or so they say. The first family that claimed it, the father fell to his death from the ridge. The second family lost half their livestock to something they never saw. Both gave up and went back south. Thank you for the warning, Torin said. The old woman looked at Geshara, her expression unreadable. Maybe the curse was just waiting for the right people. Maybe you too can break it. Or maybe there is no curse, just bad luck and poor planning, Geshara said. The old woman cackled. I like her. She has fire, you will need it up there. She shuffled away, leaving them with more questions than answers. They hiked to their parcel the next day, following a trail that petered out into game paths and then into nothing. The valley was just as it had appeared on the map, a long stretch of flat land between 2 forested ridges. The stream that Geshara had pointed out ran clear and cold, fed by snowmelt from the peaks to the north. The ground was indeed rocky, but there was soil beneath the rocks. Trees grew thick on the ridges, offering timber for building. It was beautiful in a wild, untamed way. We can do this, Geshara said, looking around with something like wonder. This could be a good home. We will have to work hard, Torin warned. Clearing land, building shelter before winter, hunting and gathering food. It will not be easy. Nothing worth having is easy, Geshara replied. She turned to him, and there was a fierceness in her expression. I accept your offer, Torin Kellaway. I will build this homestead with you as your equal partner. I will work beside you, fight beside you, and share in whatever we create here. But I need to know one thing. What? Is this truly partnership, or am I just a convenient source of labor? Be honest with me now, because I will know if you lie. Torin met her golden eyes and spoke the truth he had been avoiding for weeks. When I freed you in that tavern, it was about doing the right thing. When I asked you to travel with me, it was about keeping you safe. But somewhere along the road, it became about wanting you here. Not for labor, not for company, but because I cannot imagine building this place without you. Because when I think about the future, you are in it. As my partner, yes, but also as more if you would ever want that. Geshara's eyes widened. For a moment she looked vulnerable, uncertain, then her expression softened into something Torin had never seen on her face before. Hope. You would want me, an orc. Knowing what it would mean, the scorn you would face from your people. My people put me in a stockade for having a conscience, Torin said. I am not concerned with their opinions. I am concerned with yours. Do you feel anything for me, or am I just the human who freed you? Geshara stepped closer, close enough that he could see the flecks of amber in her golden eyes. "You are the human who freed me, yes, but you are also the human who respected my choices, who fought beside me, who shared his food and his warmth and asked for nothing in return. I did not want to care for you, I tried not to, but I do. I care for you very much, Torrin Kellaway." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. Her skin was warm and her fingers were calloused from work and hardship. "Then we build this together. As partners and as whatever else we become." "Whatever else we become," Gashara echoed, and she squeezed his hand. They set to work immediately. The first priority was shelter before the hard frosts came. They pitched the tent as a temporary measure, then began cutting logs for a cabin. Gashara was stronger than Torrin, able to carry timber he would have had to drag, but he had the experience of having built field fortifications in the army. Together, they felled trees, stripped bark, and notched logs. The work was exhausting, but they fell into a rhythm, each anticipating the other's needs. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, too tired to do more than eat and tend to their blistered hands. But those quiet moments became Torrin's favorite part of the day. Gashara would tell him stories of her clan, of the traditions and songs she remembered from before the raid. He would share his own stories, of growing up on a small farm before joining the army, of the friends he had lost in the war, of the dreams he had nursed through 3 years of violence. One night, as the first snow began to fall, Gashara taught him an orc song. It was a melody in a language he did not understand, but the sound of it was beautiful, haunting, and strong at the same time. He listened with his eyes closed, and when she finished, he opened them to find her watching him. "That was the song my mother sang when she worked," Gashara said. "It is about endurance, about surviving the hard times so you can appreciate the good times." "It is beautiful," Torrin said. "You have a beautiful voice." Gashara looked away, almost shy. "I have not sung in a long time. I did not think I would ever want to sing again, but here, with you, I feel like I can." "Then sing whenever you want," Torrin said. "This is your home. You should fill it with whatever makes you happy." They finished the cabin 2 weeks before the first major snowstorm. It was a simple structure, one large room with a loft for sleeping, a stone fireplace and shuttered windows. But it was solid and warm, and when they moved in from the tent, Gashara walked through it with tears in her eyes. "This is mine," she asked. "This is really mine." "Ours," Torrin corrected. "This is ours." She turned to him, and the tears were streaming down her green cheeks now. "I never thought I would have a home again. After the raid, after the chains, I thought I would die in captivity or die running. But this is a home. A real home." Torrin pulled her into his arms, and she came willingly, pressing her face against his shoulder. He held her while she cried, all the grief and fear and hope pouring out in great, shaking sobs. When she finally calmed, she pulled back just enough to look at him. "Thank you," she whispered. "You built this as much as I did," Torrin said. "You have nothing to thank me for." "I have everything to thank you for," Gashara said, and then, before he could respond, she kissed him. Her lips were warm and soft, and Torrin felt the world narrow to just the two of them, standing in their cabin as snow fell outside. He kissed her back, gently at first, then with more passion as she deepened the kiss. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I have wanted to do that for weeks," Gashara admitted, "but I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Afraid you would reject me. Afraid I was misreading your kindness. Afraid that if I let myself care too much, it would be taken away like everything else has been taken away." Torrin cupped her face in his hands, running his thumbs along her cheekbones. "I am not going anywhere, and I am not taking anything from you. If anything, you have given me more than I knew I needed. Purpose, partnership, hope. I care about you, Gashara." not despite what you are, but because of who you are." She kissed him again, and this time there was no fear in it, only joy and desire and the beginning of something deeper. They moved to the loft, where they had set up their bedrolls, and they made love slowly and carefully, learning each other's bodies in the warmth of their new home. Afterward, they lay tangled together, and Torin felt a contentment he had never experienced before. "I love you," he said into the darkness. "I know it is fast, and I know we have only known each other a few months, but I love you." Gashara was quiet for a moment, then she said, "In Orc tradition, love is not something you say lightly. It is a commitment, a bond that cannot be broken except by death. If I say I love you, it means I am yours and you are mine in all ways forever. Are you certain you want that?" "I am certain," Torin said without hesitation. "I am yours, Gashara, if you will have me." She rolled over to face him, her golden eyes shining in the dim light from the dying fire below. "Then I love you, Torin Kellaway. By the traditions of my people and the truth of my heart, I love you." They sealed the commitment with another kiss, and Torin knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. Winter came in hard and cold. Snow piled up around the cabin, and the stream froze over except for a narrow channel in the center. They had prepared as well as they could, with stores of smoked meat, dried vegetables, and grain. Torin hunted when the weather allowed, bringing back deer and rabbits. Gashara proved to be skilled at ice fishing, teaching him the patience required to sit still over a hole in the ice for hours. They worked on indoor projects, tanning hides, repairing tools, and planning the spring planting. The isolation was nearly complete. No one ventured up to the valley in winter, and they saw no other humans or orcs for months. But the isolation was not lonely. They had each other, and that was enough. They talked endlessly, sharing every story and dream. They played games Gashara taught him from her clan, strategy games played with colored stones on a board scratched into wood. They read the handful of books Torin had brought, taking turns reading aloud by firelight, and they loved each other, learning the depths of intimacy and connection. Gashara taught Torin the traditions of her people, the ways they expressed affection and commitment. Torin shared the human customs he remembered from his childhood, the small gestures of care and devotion. They created their own traditions, blending orc and human, building something entirely their own. One night in the deepest part of winter, when the wind howled outside and the cabin creaked under the weight of snow, Gashara said, "Tell me your greatest fear." Torin considered the question. "That I will fail you, that despite everything, I will not be enough to keep you safe or happy." "You are already enough," Gashara said. "More than enough. But I understand the fear. My greatest fear is that this is a dream and I will wake up in chains again. That all of this, you and the cabin and the home we are building, is just a fantasy my mind created to survive captivity." Torin took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "It is real. I am real. This is real. And even if the world tries to take it from us, we will fight to keep it." "Together," Gashara said. "Together," Torin agreed. Spring came slowly, the snow melting in patches, revealing the muddy ground beneath. As soon as the earth was workable, they began clearing land for planting. The rocky soil was difficult, but they were both strong and determined. They cleared 2 acres, hauling out stones and building them into a wall along the northern edge of their property. Then they plowed and planted, putting in potatoes, turnips, beans, and grain. The work was back-breaking, but it was also satisfying. Every row planted was a step toward self-sufficiency, toward a future they were building with their own hands. They fell into bed each night exhausted but content, and they woke each morning to the work that needed doing. In late spring, they had their first visitors. A family passing through on their way to claim land further north stopped at the cabin to ask for water. The father was wary when he saw Geshara, but his wife, a practical woman with a kind face, was more interested in advice about surviving the frontier. "How did you make it through the winter?" she asked Geshara. "We are worried about what to expect." Geshara gave them practical tips about storing food, keeping warm, and staying sane during the long months of isolation. The woman listened carefully, asking good questions. When they left, she thanked both Torin and Geshara, treating them as equals. It was a small thing, but it mattered. "Not everyone is an enemy," Geshara said after they left. "I need to remember that." "And not everyone is a friend," Torin added. "We need to remember that too." They were proven right on both counts over the summer. Some travelers who stopped were kind, accepting Torin and Geshara without judgment. Others were hostile, making it clear they thought Torin was a traitor and Geshara was an abomination. One man tried to start trouble, threatening to report them to territorial authorities for harboring an orc. Torin calmly informed the man that Geshara was a legal partner on a registered claim, and if he had a problem with that, he could take it up with the land office. The man left, muttering threats, but nothing came of it. In midsummer, they had a different kind of visitor. 3 orcs appeared at the edge of their property, warriors by the look of them. Geshara tensed immediately, and Torin rested his hand on his rifle, but he let Geshara take the lead. She stepped forward, calling out in the orcish language. The warriors responded, and a conversation ensued that Torin could not follow. He watched the body language, ready to fight if necessary, but the tone seemed more curious than hostile. After several minutes, Geshara turned to him. "They are scouts from the Iron Hill clan. They have heard rumors of a human and an orc living together on the frontier, and they came to see if it was true." "What did you tell them?" Torin asked. "The truth, that we are partners building a life together." "They are skeptical, but they are not hostile. They want to know if you are treating me well, or if this is some kind of trick." Torin addressed the warriors directly, even though he did not know if they understood his language. "Geshara is my partner and the woman I love. She is free to leave any time she chooses. She stays because she wants to, not because she has to. If you doubt that, ask her." The lead warrior, a tall orc with scars across his chest, looked at Geshara. She responded in Orcish, her voice strong and clear. The warrior listened, then nodded. He said something else, and Geshara's eyes widened. "What did he say?" Torin asked. "He said that if what we have is real, it is a rare thing. He also said that the Iron Hill clan will not trouble us, and if we need help we can call on them. It is a significant offer." The warriors left, disappearing into the forest as silently as they had come. Geshara stood staring after them, looking shaken. Torin put his arm around her. "Are you all right?" "I did not expect that," she admitted. "I thought they would be disgusted or angry. Instead, they offered protection." "It is more than I dared hope for." "Maybe the world is changing," Torin said. "Slowly, but changing." "Or maybe we are changing the world," Geshara replied. "One small piece of it at least." By the end of summer, their crops were growing well, and they had built a small barn for Rust and the cow they had bought from a passing trader. They also added a chicken coop, and Geshara took great delight in collecting eggs each morning. Their homestead was becoming self-sufficient, a real working farm. One evening, as they sat on the porch they had built onto the front of the cabin, watching the sun set over the valley, Geshara said, "I have been thinking." "About what?" Torin asked. "About making this official. Among my people, there is a bonding ceremony, a way to declare before witnesses that 2 people are committed to each other for life. Among your people, there is marriage. I want both. I want everyone to know that we are bound together, that this is not just convenience or novelty, but something real and permanent." Torin's heart swelled. He had been thinking the same thing but had been afraid to bring it up, worried that Geshara would feel pressured. "I want that too. More than anything. Will you marry me, Geshara?" She smiled, that rare, beautiful smile that lit up her entire face. "Yes, I will marry you, Torin Kellaway. By human law and Orc tradition, I will bind my life to yours." They planned the ceremony for the autumn after the harvest. It would be simple, just the two of them and whatever witnesses they could gather. Torin rode to Last Hope to register the marriage with the territorial clerk, the same man who had filed their land claim. The clerk raised his eyebrows but filled out the paperwork without comment. "You are really doing this?" he asked. "Marrying an Orc?" "I am marrying the woman I love," Torin said. "Her species is irrelevant." The clerk shook his head but stamped the papers. "You are braver than me, or crazier, maybe both. Congratulations, I suppose." On the day of the ceremony, they dressed in their best clothes. Torin wore a clean shirt and trousers, and Geshara wore a dress she had sewn herself from fabric they had bought in Last Hope. It was simple, dyed a deep blue that brought out the green of her skin and the gold of her eyes. She looked stunning. They had invited the few neighbors who had been kind to them, and to their surprise, several showed up. The practical woman from the spring came with her husband and children. An old trapper who had stopped for supplies and a meal came, along with his dog. And the 3 Orc warriors from the Iron Hill clan appeared, standing at the edge of the gathering, silent witnesses. Torin and Geshara stood facing each other in front of the cabin, and they spoke their vows. Torin went first, his voice steady and clear. "I, Torin Kellaway, take you, Geshara, to be my wife. I promise to stand by you in all things, to work beside you, to fight for you, and to love you all the days of my life. Your joys are my joys, your sorrows are my sorrows, and your future is my future. I am yours, now and forever." Geshara's eyes shone with tears as she spoke her vows in Orcish first, then translated for the human witnesses. "I, Geshara, daughter of Grishak, take you, Torin Kellaway, to be my husband. I promise to stand by you in all things, to work beside you, to fight for you, and to love you all the days of my life. By the strength of my people and the truth of my heart, I bind myself to you. Your blood is my blood, your name is my name, and your honor is my honor. I am yours, now and forever." They exchanged rings, simple bands Torin had forged himself from silver he had traded for. Then they kissed, sealing the vows, and the small gathering cheered. Even the Orc warriors raised their fists in salute. They shared a meal with their guests, a feast by frontier standards. There was roasted venison, fresh bread, vegetables from their garden, and a pie the practical woman had brought as a gift. They ate and talked, and for a few hours, it felt like they were part of a community, not just isolated on the edge of the world. As the sun set and the guests departed, the lead Orc warrior approached Geshara. He spoke to her in Orcish, and she responded. Then he turned to Torin and in halting but understandable human language said, "You are brave, you honor her. That is good. Be well." "Thank you," Torin said, and he meant it. When everyone was gone, Torin and Geshara stood together in the twilight, looking at the homestead they had built. "This is ours," Geshara said softly. "This home, this life, this love, no one can take it from us." "No one," Torin agreed. He pulled her close, and they stood in silence, holding each other as the stars came out above them. The first year of their marriage was not easy, but it was good. They worked hard, harvesting their crops and preparing for their second winter. They hunted and preserved meat, chopped enough wood to keep the cabin warm, and reinforced the barn against the heavy snows they knew were coming. They also continued to improve the homestead, building a smokehouse and a root cellar, expanding the garden plot and clearing more land for future planting. Their closest neighbors, the practical woman and her family, became friends. They traded goods and labor, helping each other with big projects. The woman, whose name was Sarah, became particularly close to Geshara. She was one of the few humans who treated Geshara without suspicion or fear, and Geshara treasured the friendship. One day, Sarah asked Geshara, "Are you happy?" Geshara considered the question. "Yes," she said finally. "I did not think I could be happy again, but I am. Torin has given me a home, a future, and love. What more could I want? Children," Sarah suggested gently. "You and Torin are young and healthy. Have you thought about it?" Geshara had thought about it often, but the idea also frightened her. "I do not know if human and orc can have children together. And even if we can, I worry about what kind of life a half-orc child would have. Neither human nor orc, accepted by neither people, or loved by both," Sarah said. "Your child would have you and Torin, and that would be enough. And maybe, just maybe, your child would be a bridge between your peoples, a sign that peace is possible." Geshara took the words to heart, and that night she talked to Torin about it. "Do you want children?" she asked. Torin was quiet for a moment, thinking. "I do," he admitted. "I have wanted children since I was young, a family to call my own. But I want what is best for you, Geshara. If you are not ready, or if you do not want children, that is fine. I love you either way." "I want children," Geshara said. "I am just afraid of what it would mean for them, growing up in a world that hates what they are." "Then we teach them to be strong," Torin said. "We teach them that their heritage, both human and orc, is something to be proud of. We teach them that love is stronger than hate and that they are wanted and valued. And we build a world here in this valley where they can grow up safe and loved." Geshara felt the fear recede, replaced by hope. "Then let us try. Let us build a family just as we have built this home." Spring came again, and with it, joy. Geshara discovered she was pregnant. She told Torin one morning as they worked in the garden, and he lifted her up and spun her around, laughing with pure happiness. She laughed too, feeling lighter than she had in years. The pregnancy was not easy. Geshara was sick for the first few months, and Torin did his best to take on extra work to spare her. But she insisted on doing her share, refusing to be treated as fragile. As her belly grew, they prepared a corner of the loft as a nursery, building a cradle and sewing blankets. Sarah came often, bringing advice and supplies, and the orc warriors visited once, bringing herbs that would ease the birth. In late autumn, as the first snow began to fall, Geshara went into labor. Torin sent for Sarah, who had helped deliver several babies, and together they attended Geshara through the long, difficult night. Torin held Geshara's hand, murmuring encouragement, and when the baby finally came, he was the first to hold the tiny, squalling infant. "A girl," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "We have a daughter." Geshara, exhausted but radiant, reached for the baby. Torin placed her carefully in Geshara's arms, and they both looked down at the miracle they had created. The baby had green skin a shade lighter than Geshara's, small tusks just barely visible, pointed ears, and a shock of black hair. Her eyes, when they opened, were a stunning mix of gold and brown. She was perfect. "What should we name her?" Torin asked. Geshara thought for a moment. "Among my people, we name children for the virtues we hope they will embody. I would name her Hope, if you agree, because she is the hope of a better future." "Hope Kellaway," Torin said, testing the name. "It is perfect. She is perfect." They raised Hope together, marveling at every milestone. Her first smile, her first word, her first steps. She grew quickly, strong and healthy, with her mother's fierce spirit and her father's gentle heart. The neighbors who visited treated her with kindness, and the orc warriors who checked on them called her a blessing. But there were also those who saw Hope as an abomination. One day, when Hope was 2 years old, a man came to the homestead. He was a preacher of some sort, dressed in black and carrying a book. He looked at Hope playing in the yard, and his face twisted with disgust. "You have created a monster," he said to Torin. "An offense against nature. This child should not exist." Torin's hand went to his sword, but Geshara stepped forward first. "This child is a gift," she said, her voice cold and hard. "She is loved and wanted. If you have a problem with her existence, you have a problem with us. And if you have a problem with us, I suggest you leave before you say something that cannot be taken back." The preacher looked at Geshara, at her fierce golden eyes and the set of her jaw, and wisely chose to leave. Torin put his arm around Geshara, and they watched the man disappear down the trail. "There will always be people like him," Geshara said quietly. "People who hate what they do not understand." "Then we teach Hope to be strong," Torin said. "We teach her that her worth is not determined by the opinions of small-minded people. We teach her to be proud of who she is." And they did. As Hope grew, they taught her about both her human and orc heritage. They taught her to plant and harvest, to hunt and fish, to build and repair. They taught her to read and write, using Torin's books. They taught her orcish songs and human stories. They taught her to defend herself, because they knew the world would not always be kind. But most of all, they taught her that she was loved, unconditionally and completely. By the time Hope was 5, the homestead was thriving. They had expanded their fields, built a second barn, and acquired more livestock. They traded with neighbors and with passing travelers, and their reputation as fair and hardworking spread. Some people still refused to deal with them because of Geshara, but others came specifically because they knew Torin and Geshara were honest. The orc clans in the northern ranges also knew of them. More orcs visited over the years, curious about the mixed family. Some were hostile, but most were simply curious. Geshara's story of being enslaved and freed, of finding love and building a life, resonated with many. She became a kind of symbol, proof that humans and orcs could coexist, could even love each other. One summer day, when Hope was 6, a delegation from the Iron Hill clan arrived. The lead warrior, now older and scarred from many battles, spoke to Geshara in Orcish. Torin could not understand the words, but he could see Geshara's expression change from surprise to wonder to joy. When the delegation left, Geshara turned to Torin, tears streaming down her face. "They have offered me a place among their clan, not as an outsider but as a full member. They said that what I have built here with you and Hope is worthy of honor. They want to recognize me and by extension recognize you and Hope as well." "That is incredible," Torin said, pulling her into his arms. "What did you tell them?" "I told them I already have a clan, my family, you and Hope. But I also told them I would be proud to be counted among the Iron Hill orcs, as long as it is understood that my first loyalty is here, to this home and this family." And they accepted that. They did. They said that loyalty to family is the most important loyalty. They also said that if we ever need help, the Iron Hill clan will answer. Torin held her close, feeling the weight of what that meant. They were no longer alone on the frontier. They had allies, friends, a community that spanned both human and orc. It was more than he had ever dared hope for. As the years passed, more families like theirs emerged on the frontier. Humans and orcs who defied convention, who built lives together despite the prejudice and hatred. Some succeeded, some failed, but each one was a small act of rebellion against the way things had always been. Torin and Geshara's homestead became a symbol of what was possible, a beacon for those who dared to hope for something better. Hope grew into a strong, confident young woman, proud of her mixed heritage. She made friends among both humans and orcs, moving easily between the two worlds. She had her mother's strength and her father's kindness, and everyone who met her saw the best of both peoples in her. One evening, when Hope was 15, she asked her parents, "Do you ever regret it? The hardship, the prejudice, the struggle?" Torin and Gishara looked at each other, then back at their daughter. "Never," Torin said. "Every hardship was worth it to have this life, this family. Every struggle brought us closer to where we are now," Gishara added. "I would do it all again, 1,000 times over, to have you in this home." Hope smiled, satisfied with the answer. She hugged them both, and Torin felt a contentment so deep it was almost painful. This was what he had fought for, what he had worked for. This moment, this family, this love. More years passed, and the homestead continued to thrive. Torin and Gishara grew older, their hair turning gray, their bodies marked by years of hard work. But their love never faded. If anything, it grew stronger, tempered by time and adversity into something unbreakable. Hope eventually left the homestead to explore the world, but she always returned, bringing stories and friends and eventually a partner of her own, a kind human man who loved her for exactly who she was. They built their own homestead not far from Torin and Gishara, continuing the legacy. On a warm summer evening when Torin was 50 and Gishara was 48, they sat on the porch of the cabin they had built so many years ago. The valley was green and lush, their fields full of crops, their barns full of livestock. Grandchildren played in the yard, a mix of human and orc and everything in between. The world had not changed as much as Torin had hoped, but it had changed some. And here in their small corner of the frontier, they had built something that mattered. "You remember the night we met?" Gishara asked, her hand in his. "Every detail," Torin said. "The cards, the tavern, your eyes in the shadows. I remember thinking I had made a terrible mistake getting involved." Gishara laughed. "And now I know it was the best decision I ever made. Everything good in my life came from that moment. You, Hope, this home, this family. All of it started because I sat down at a card game I never meant to play. And I started living again because you gave me choices instead of chains," Gishara said. She leaned her head on his shoulder, and they watched the sun set over the valley they had claimed so long ago. "I love you," Torin said. "Then, now, always." "I love you," Gishara replied. "By the strength of my people and the truth of my heart, I love you." They sat together as the stars came out, two souls who had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances and built something beautiful. Their story was not one of grand heroism or epic adventure. It was a story of small choices, daily kindnesses, and the quiet courage it took to love someone the world said you should not love. But in the end, that was the most important story of all. Because love, real love, was always an act of rebellion. And Torin and Gishara had rebelled together, creating a life and a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. The night deepened, and the valley filled with the sounds of crickets and frogs and the distant howl of a wolf. Inside the cabin, a fire crackled in the hearth. In the yard, grandchildren laughed and played, and on the porch, two people who had once been strangers, who had once been from different worlds, sat together in perfect peace. They had built a home. They had built a family. They had built a future. And they had done it all by choosing love over fear, partnership over power, and hope over despair. It was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.